Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. I love to help people integrate spirit, mind, and body in order to live each day with that deep sense of passion, purpose, and fulfillment. And last week, I spoke about forgiveness being the ultimate freedom. Sometimes forgiveness is what is in the way of us integrating spirit, mind, and body. Well, this week we're talking about self-forgiveness. Forgiving ourselves is sometimes even harder and yet even more rewarding. So, how do we reconcile our past mistakes and missteps, our regrets and transgressions? Let's explore. Before we begin, I just invite you to take a deep breath and check in. Just listen from your whole being, whether you're walking the dog or driving in the car or relaxing on the back deck. Just take a deep breath and be listening with that intention that you will find something wonderful and amazing for you, about you, to lift you up in this podcast. Today, we're exploring the profound and transformative power of self-forgiveness. Many people, many spiritual teachers of every culture and background know that self-forgiveness is a cornerstone of spiritual well-being, a journey inward that requires us to confront our deepest regrets and transgressions with compassion and forgiveness and understanding. Not only in spirituality, but in psychology and standard medical practice, we're taught that holding on to guilt and shame blocks our health and causes stress. It blocks the flow of love and creativity in our lives. And when we forgive ourselves, we open that door to healing and transformation. And here's the key: we are the gatekeepers. We're the key holders. We're the only ones who can do it for ourselves. When we forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we've made, when we explore our mistakes with curiosity and compassion, we can learn from them. We can learn to be more of our authentic self, our divine expression. And of course, we have more compassion for others who are making transgressions against us as well. When we learn to view our past mistakes as lessons rather than burdens or boulders that we have to carry for the rest of our lives, when we learn that they're lessons, we can let down the boulders, we can release the past, and we float with that sense of freedom and forgiveness. Each mistake then becomes an opportunity for growth, that stepping stone, that open gateway on our spiritual journey. I spoke last week that when we forgive others, we free ourselves. Well, in the same way, when we forgive ourselves, we allow ourselves to grow and expand. We can be fully free. Shame, guilt, and blaming ourselves for our past mistakes are like blocks in walls, keeping us from our freedom. Freedom to be our authentic expression, freedom to be uninhibited, freedom to be unapologetically our true selves now, to be who we are or who we know ourselves to be now. Who is holding us back? Only we are. Last week, I spoke about several misperceptions that many of us have around the concept of forgiving others. And there are a few around self forgiveness. And the first one that they have in common is that first, we must understand that forgiving ourselves is not about condoning our actions, but about releasing the hold that they have on integrating our spirit, mind, and body. Sometimes we're the ones who have inflicted pain or suffering on others. Perhaps it was when we lacked awareness or understanding, or when we reacted out of fear, confusion, or anger or jealousy, we hurt someone. When we forgive ourselves, we are not condoning or justifying our behaviors or shortcomings. We are fully acknowledging them. And to be honest, fully acknowledging the hurt or the damage, the pain that we've inflicted upon another person. And to truly forgive ourselves, we have to accept 100% responsibility for our actions and our participation. We process, all of those feelings that arise. And we feel that if we're really ready to forgive ourselves and grow, that genuine sorrow and regret for the pain that we've caused kind of rises up within us. When we're truly sorry and regretful, there's a knowing that we would never make that mistake again. We would never make that same choice to hurt another in that way again. That's freedom, that's growth and expansion. And we get to acknowledge ourselves for that while we release that hold that that guilt has on us. We acknowledge the change within us and we have compassion for ourselves. And this is the same compassion that we have for others when we realize that they were doing the best they could. Maya Angelou stated beautifully, forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it. To forgive ourselves, notice that I said we need to go through that, that painful process of accepting full responsibility for our actions. I did a podcast a few weeks ago about accepting 100% responsibility for ourselves. I will put that in the notes. Only when we are able to take full responsibility for our actions are we able to take full responsibility for our healing. There's no blaming the other or blaming the circumstances or anything else. We are 100% responsible for our actions, those actions that resulted in hurting someone else. But we forgive ourselves for not knowing what we didn't know before we knew it. We have compassion for ourselves. If we knew better, we would have done better. If we could have seen better choices, we would have made better choices. So that love and compassion for ourselves is so important in this process of self-forgiveness. It's seeing ourselves as the beautiful child that we are. It's acknowledging that we could only know what we knew then. And as I said, that's usually the hardest step to take because for some of us, there is a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. We see ourselves, we judge ourselves as a bad person, as a terrible person, as unforgivable. When we've done something wrong, though, it is natural. It's a naturally occurring a phenomenon psychologically that guilt arises. Guilt is a healthy response. Feeling guilty invites us to explore what could we have done? What were the other options that we were blinded to in that moment? So guilt is an invitation. Shame, however, can become overwhelming. It's like it's just too much to deal with, and we shut down in shame and we skip the whole process. We skip the process of self exploration. We skip the process of taking responsibility. Therefore, we skip the process of forgiving ourselves. So it's important to be the observer. I'm laughing because I did a podcast on becoming the observer as well. And it's like, when we sense ourselves being overwhelmed in shame, that's sort of an invitation to be with it, to breathe, to love ourselves and explore a little bit more. Sometimes we may need to reach out for help doing this if shame is shutting us down and not allowing us to forgive ourselves. We need to be able to find a way to explore everything that we're feeling, to examine it so that we can work through it. When we allow ourselves the understanding that we did the best we could at the time, and we move into the understanding that now, in this moment, we know better, we can do better. With a renewed understanding, we vow for ourselves, to ourselves, to do better, to understand more, to live our life from love rather than fear or pain or regret. The next step then is often to make decisions or take actions that will make amends, that will give us a sense of erasing that episode in our lives. So even if the person is no longer in our lives or no longer alive, living on the planet, we can express our regret and ask for forgiveness. We can write in our journal. We can write a letter that we may never send. We can write a letter to someone who is deceased, asking them to participate in our new understanding, in our growth and expansion. We can take the steps that show the other that we have changed, matured, and grown from our efforts and our understanding and our self forgiveness. And it isn't in our words, but of course, words are helpful to people, but it's what is behind the words. It's our actions, it's our countenance, our intention, it's our state of being. Who are we being as we acknowledge all of this with someone else? When we're genuine and we are communicating on that level beyond words, to regain trust and earn forgiveness, if that is our goal. We are speaking spirit to spirit, heart to heart, soul to soul. But here is misperception number two. It's interesting and powerful and important to note that we do not need to be forgiven by others in order to forgive ourselves. We may want that, we may work towards that, but it isn't necessary for our spiritual growth and awakening. Forgiving ourselves is necessary. Having others forgive us is a misperception. It would be great. Many of us would just rejoice at the day where we would earn someone's trust and forgiveness. But if we cannot get that, that is not our job. Really, our job is right here. It is taking full responsibility for ourselves and our spiritual awakening, integrating our spirit, mind, and body. We cannot control what other people will hold on to in their journey through their life. We're ultimately responsible for our growth and expansion. When we go through this process, we now know how to choose love and compassion to heal and reveal that wholeness that is within us. We recognize that from our past perspective, we did the only thing that we could have done. Another essential aspect of self forgiveness is that understanding that we are always evolving. The person who made those past mistakes is not the same person who stands where you're standing today. So embrace the journey of becoming, of unfolding, of growth and expansion that you are into your true self, into your authentic expression. We are not who we were. We are right now standing in a new space of love and understanding. Your past does not define you. It can refine you. It can strengthen you. It can allow you to grow gracefully when we forgive ourselves. And there is a third level of self-forgiveness that I'll talk about here, and it's that idea that we forgive ourselves for our harsh judgments of ourselves. So we're not talking about transgressions we've done with other people or mistakes that we've made regarding other people or even ourselves, but it's our thoughts about ourselves. It's our judgments. It's those thoughts where we say, I am so stupid. I can't believe I did that again. I never get things right. I don't deserve that. I don't work hard enough. Whatever it is, we are our harshest critics. And when we come to realize that that inner critic that is running constantly, when we're ready to reprogram that, we forgive ourselves for judging ourselves as limited, as lacking, as unworthy. So it's another level of self-forgiveness that really just involves me, myself, and I, my thoughts. I may have picked them up from someone. They may have said I wasn't smart, but if I didn't accept that, then I wouldn't believe it. At some point, I picked that up and I allowed myself to believe that I am not smart enough. I am not good enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I don't have enough experience, education. I'm too this or not enough that. All of those things that we judge ourselves. I forgive myself for judging myself as, and write it down. Look at it, explore it. It's that same idea of really being curious about the voices in our head that are so hard. We're so harsh to ourselves. If we spoke to our beloved that way, if we spoke to our spouse, our partner, our dog that way, we would we would be forgiving ourselves all the time. But we allow ourselves to speak to ourselves that way, mostly because we don't hear it anymore. It's that silent mm, noise in the background, like the refrigerator running. But I invite you in this idea of self-forgiveness, and this is big, by the way. We could do months. I can do a 12-week long class on self-forgiveness because that's the only thing ultimately that we really ever need to do. When we release ourselves from our judgments of ourselves, from not being smart enough to handle that problem, for not being aware enough to, or to foresee that event, we just bless ourselves. Because again, we are not that person any longer. We are a new person. We have evolved and now we can see a bigger picture. But that bigger picture has to include self-love through self-forgiveness. When we are able to look at every nook and cranny within the recesses of our mind, the recesses of our heart, the recesses of our soul, when we're able to look at what they call the dark side or the shadow side and bless that, we become whole. The light grows into those shadow places. The light shines upon the cracks and the crevices, and it feels whole. We're not squishing and squashing and sweeping under the rug parts of ourselves. We're looking at them, blessing them, honoring them, and allowing the space for all of who we are as this divine human being. We integrate spirit, mind, and body, all of it, every single bit. So that's wholeness and unity. But anytime we are judging ourselves, we are in the jar. Judgments, attachments, reactions, resistance. We cannot be all of who we are stuck in a jar. We get out of the jar through self-forgiveness, self-awareness, and self-forgiveness. And it brings self-love. And ultimately, that's where love comes from. It doesn't come from out there. It's being released. As we release all the blocks inside, it just bubbles up and wells up within, and then it's overflowing. And we have love to give, love to share, love to pour into and onto and through everything. That's the power of self-forgiveness. I invite you to reach out with any questions or comments. Maybe I've sparked some ideas on self-forgiveness for you. And you can find out more information about this and other things at my website, elizabethcantey.com, or in my book, Living Enlightened, The Joy of Integrating Spirit, Mind, and Body. That's on Amazon. I'll have a link to that in the notes. I'll also link the other episodes that I mentioned in this podcast. So be sure to hit the like button if you liked this, and subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode, and share this with a friend. Maybe they are ready to hear some of these gems for themselves. Maybe they're ready to really love themselves and let go of that which no longer serves them anymore. I thank you for joining me on this journey of self-forgiveness, and join me every week for a new episode, a new insight into how we can love our life and live our passion every single day. And remember to forgive yourself for anything that has come before this moment now, so that you can laugh, love, and live enlightened every day.